I think I have the answer. They can't invade because of the yokai. I think these spirits, or yokai, or whatever, are protecting the Earth from alien invasion.
Hear that? All you need is milk to save your kid.
Super demon blood is milk.
If you're ever in trouble, give me a shout and I'll come right over.
Well, Grandma, believe in aliens now?
Nah, that was totally a cop-out.
Hi there, everyone. Lars and Scott back for another review and analysis of Dandadan, this time for episode 10, brought to you by Camille's Harem. Not just a podcast for novice writers by novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers. Because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends.
We're back with more Dandadan.
Oh yeah, and we got another episode that kind of pumps the brakes just a little bit to give us some good character reflection, some good character growth moments, set up the next big thing to happen within the show, as well as deliver still some really funky moments. But it's actually pretty incredible what all this episode does. Light on the action, but great on the dialogue.
Yeah, a lot of great dialogue, but a lot of great grounding moments, because like you've had this insanity and then now we're back to normal, back to everyday life, and we're having to deal with the consequences from the previous two episodes. And like it's great to start out the episode by dealing with the like end of the previous episode where they found themselves having to run for cover after dealing with the aliens and finding themselves in a compromising situation in front of the rest of the student body.
Yeah, that's a pretty awkward way to end the latest episode. And where they run off to is to the school nurse. And we got a very interesting opening with what looks like a moment where they're going to get punished. But instead, the school nurse is like, so, are you being bullied? And they're like, no, that's not the way that this looks. That's not the way that this looks. I mean, bullying has been going on, but none of them are ready to yet actually throw the other under the bus after everything that they've just gone through. And as the nurse is ready to interrogate them further, one of the members of the administration comes on in, interrupts, which then brings out the more masochistic side of the nurse to beat this guy
sadistic
up.
Side.
Yeah, there we go. The sadistic side. Well, who knows? The sadistic side of the nurse comes on out to punish this guy, leaving the kids in a really awkward situation. But honestly, they make the most of it, talking through what's just happened to them, and not only figuring out how they're going to work out the awkwardness and the inevitable fallout of what's just happened with the three of them being discovered naked Okaru naked, the two other girls almost naked in the hallway. And this actually leads then to a good discussion and reflection on what the heck is going on. Like, Ira, you now have acro-silky powers. That's unexpected. How long have you known? I only knew just today in this fight. This was completely unexpected. Who are these guys? Well, these aliens are after us. Why are they after us? Because of our powers. But then also, they didn't realize that Ira had any powers, and they seemed more focused on getting Okaru rather than going after Momo. They just wanted to outright kill Momo. And this leaves them kind of in a lurch. What really is going on? Which leads to an interesting claim from Okaru stating that maybe the reason why the aliens haven't done a full-scale invasion of Earth is because even with all their great powers, time and time again, it's proven that the supernatural powers of ghosts, of demons, of monsters on Earth is so great that the aliens haven't been able to quantify it or figure out a way of beating it just yet. And so all these supernatural phenomena are what's keeping the Earth safe, which is great, but also that kind of puts into perspective just what kinds of horrors these kids are dealing with. Acro Silky, Turbo Granny, the Crab are all kind of just like the tip of the iceberg in this particular case. It's played off for a joke, but it should leave you for a moment thinking, oh crud, what are we dealing with? That moment of reflection is broken up when Momo's friends come on in and try to figure out what exactly is going on. They have a hilarious explanation for why Momo was with Okaru and why she and Ira were practically naked. It's because they were having a mathematical gladiatorial battle between each other over the nerd. Yes, they couldn't be more wrong. Everyone breaks up to go back to the classes that they're supposed to, and Ira has a really big character moment where, as her class is all like, "Oh, Ira, you're the absolute best. This must be the work of that horrible Momo Ayase. We hear all of these nasty rumors about her. They must be true." To which then Ira swallows a very bitter pill and tells them, "No, none of that's true. In fact, she was the one who was spreading those awful rumors about Momo," which then leads her to just being absolutely distraught outside. She's like, my carefully crafted image has been broken. Momo goes to confront her about it and says, "Hey, look, I could have taken all the heat if you had said something. Why didn't you?" And they're interrupted by the crab alien showing on up, getting ready to fight them, passing out from blood loss. He gets taken back on over to Granny's place, bandaged on up, is shown some great kindness. And as everyone's trying to figure out what to do with him, he breaks down, apologizes for what's happened, thanks them for showing him just basic decency, which he has almost never experienced because of what his species is. And he's one of the weaker beings of his species. And he only took this job in the first place because he needs money to afford the transfusions for his son, who's losing blood. And lo and behold, there is a solution. His blood basically is uncured cow milk, or at least a variant of it. And so the solution is give this guy a cow. And so Momo's grandmother manages to procure a cow for him, and we get this amazing epic abduction of a cow into a flying saucer. The crab guy says, "Hey, if you ever need any sort of travel across the universe, just give me a call. I'll be there to help you." Whoosh, flies off. Seems like the day is saved. And then Okarun gets to meet the competition. A new boy has shown up at the house, and he's Momo's old friend and crush. End episode.
Did we mention that kind of heart to heart that Momo and Okarun had, where like Okarun finally had to explain why he was trying to weight train and ended up in that like odd position with Ida before like the aliens attacked?
Ooh, very good. I did skip over that.
Yeah, because there was a really like fun, awkward, like very rom-com kind of scene, which was just so much fun to watch. Like, it's not my top when that comes to this kind of thing. There's a scene in the movie, the anime movie Belle, that like takes the cake every single time. But this was very well done. Like they're like so awkward and trying to like explain everything, and like Okarun isn't willing to like completely let go his pride, but Momo's onto him for sure.
And already then jumping into an analysis bit, I really do like this. I know that there are some people who are all like, dude, just say how you feel right off the bat. Let's just get to the good stuff. And while there is like a certain logic to that, at the same time, both fictionally speaking and also realistically speaking, if you come blazing out of the gates, all guns firing, be all like, girl, I like you, then you better hope that girl 100% likes you back. Otherwise, you are screwed, because that's coming on way too strong, and could also come across in some kind of way that would be unappealing to the girl, even if she has feelings for you. And it goes the same way if a girl says that to a guy. If the girl comes on too strong, it might put the guy on off. And so realistically speaking, like, no, you don't just come out and say immediately how you're feeling, because it could very quickly lead to a rejection where one didn't need to be had. And on top of that, this is Okarun's first real friend. He only just recently, like basically like 2 days ago, realized, oh my gosh, maybe I do have feelings for Momo, but she's also my first and my best friend. This is awkward for him. So hiding behind the excuse of pride is a very easy way of sidestepping a much bigger situation that Okarun is just not yet ready to deal with. And so it actually works really well for his character. It's realistic, and fictionally speaking, like speaking in terms of the story, this helps us to extend the romance a little bit longer and enjoy the awkwardness, because the awkwardness is part of the comedy.
Yeah, well, and I think it's a big step forward, and it's funny that we're getting this from a shonen anime instead of a shoujo one, because like the shoujo cliche is, oh, I'm gonna confess to my senpai, and he's gonna say yes, and everything's gonna go all peachy from there. And no, often enough, a relationship takes a lot more time and effort to get to know each other before you're finally getting to the, oh, I like you, I love you kind of stage. And I'm liking that the story, without all of the crazy shenanigans that are happening, is taking the time to actually like introduce the stuff for the characters. I mean, it may be like pretty fast in comparison, because what, they've only known each other a week at most. I don't know the actual timeline, but it feels like they've only known each other for like a very short amount of time, because they, for most of this time, they've just been surviving each and every day. But like again, that like shared trauma and the amount of like effort, the PTSD they both went through, like it creates that bond between them. And now Ida's thrown into the mix. She's part of that bond as well.
And kind of moving a little bit on from that to talking about the dynamic with Ira. Like, I can understand why some people might be upset that Ira now sticks around a whole lot more, because she's an interesting and somewhat difficult character to deal with. She's got a bit of a hero complex going on. But
she is the hero complex. I'm sorry, she is
she is the hero complex. But her sticking around and having the different conversations that she's had with Momo, beginning in the nurse's office to the bench outside, and then going on over to Psycho's place, all show that at some fundamental level, these two have formed a stronger and better relationship than that of two antagonists going up against each other. Two girls who are jealous of each other, who are at each other's throats. Maybe we can't necessarily call them yet friends, but this is a good step along that way. And it's refreshing to see this in a shonen story where, again, when you beat the bad guy either dies or now becomes your friend. And in this case, Ira has not immediately become the friend. Ira has become the immediate awkward person with a crush on Okarun and is trying to figure out things with Momo. And it's building up to the point where you can see them eventually becoming friends rather than them becoming instant friends. And that feels refreshing. And it allows us to explore more of who Ira is as a character, that despite her hero complex, there is actually something good deep down. Because if she wasn't a good person deep down, she would never have been able to admit to everyone that she was the person spreading the rumors about Momo. It's enough to say that, oh, you shouldn't say that bad stuff. It's a completely other level to own up to the fact that she did it.
Right. And it kind of like just a line that she said somewhere in there, and it was when she was fighting with Momo, like while they're having dinner. But she basically alluded to like, and it was part of her whole like hero complex thing, but she basically alluded that she was Sailor Moon. And I'm like, there's a few actual parallels there, because like Sailor Moon also a lot of the time is very gaudy and vain and like self-centered at times, but when it comes like down to it, when it really matters, saving the day, helping her friends, like fighting the power of love and justice, like that's very much who her character is. And Ida's starting more and more to like showcase those things as well. And so like there is an actual comparison going on there, and it like in one of her lines it outright states that.
Yeah. And it's it's great to see this, because this is the kind of character development that we honestly want to see in great stories. We're seeing it with Ira, we're seeing it with Okarun, and we are seeing it with Momo. Momo is getting set up, I think, for some great character development as well. Like, we've seen her be the badass, we've seen her be the smart one, we've seen her be the leader, and those are more like character traits. But now, at the end of this episode, now that the childhood best friend and old crush has shown up, how is this going to affect her relationship with Okarun? How
Mhm.
is this going? How is she going to deal with this guy coming back on it? And now with superpowers involved, we've seen good development for Momo in terms of her relationship with Okarun, but now I think a lot of what she's learned and gained now gets to be challenged, and challenged in a fun way.
Yeah.
Is my hope. So if it feels like Momo hasn't had as much character development as Okarun and Ira thus far, the story hasn't forgotten her, is something I'm happy to say.
Well, and we've been pointing this out the entire way. This story is like completely based around the characters. It's completely based around their relationships and their reactions and the way they're handling the crazy stuff that's happening to them. And it's really well showcased in this episode, because we could easily in the story have this narrator that takes the time to explain what's going on, to like explain a lot of these like this crazy stuff happening to them, explaining like the aliens and the yokai and like everything that's going on there. But instead, no, we have the characters coming up with their own theories and explaining it to each other how the stuff's working. So you've got the scene in the nurse's office where Okarun goes heavy on the whiteboard, like laying out this entire situation where the aliens are trying to invade Earth, but they can't because of the yokai. So instead of like trying to fight the yokai directly, because the yokai keep kicking their butts, they're going after these high school kids who just barely inherited like these abilities so they can study them and figure out a way to defeat the yokai. But this is all from Okarun's understanding. And so we as the audience, we don't really know if this is fully true or not. It's only really at this point, only the author really knows what the truth of it is. But we're seeing the world building from the character's point of view. And it's a great example of show don't tell.
And to kind of play along with that, I love the contrast between Okarun, Ira, and Momo trying to figure out everything about the yokai and the aliens, and then this gets fantastically juxtaposed with Momo's two friends coming in and revealing what they've discovered and what they think, and it's actually very accurate up until their conclusion. It's like, oh, and naked gladiatorial games. And the reason why I bring this up is because I feel like this actually feeds into your point of the show don't tell, is that it makes you then guess, is this really what's going on? Is it because the yokai are just so much stronger than the aliens that the aliens can't come? Is Okarun correct? Or is this just a wild assumption, just like with Momo's friends? We have all of the same information, but is the conclusion correct?
Right.
And that leaves the tension, and it actually keeps the stakes high. Which from a writer's perspective, it's great to have very solid stakes and goals that the audience can latch onto, but there's also the fun of letting the audience at times speculate what is really up for grabs. Because if you don't have all the information, or if you're dealing with an unreliable narrator, but you like the story and you like the characters, it prompts the audience to also speculate, to theorize, and to become even more engaged with the story, to fill in those gaps, eagerly waiting for the answer.
Yeah, and it could be a lot of fun to set up a story like that, where like you don't know everything that's going on, but by the end you will know. So it's very kind of Sherlock Holmes kind of feeling to it, because like they go through all this stuff and the adventure, but they get to the end and Holmes is able to like explain everything that happened. I think a better example actually is Leverage, the TV show Leverage.
Ooh, Leverage.
Because every episode is like that, where you have like this crazy adventure going on, and then, oh yeah, we won, and then you like get this little flashback explaining, and this is what you missed kind of idea. So we're not getting everything, but it's still a fun adventure up to that point, and that stuff will get explained to a certain point. I mean, we don't need to go down the Star Wars path of explaining everything in every little detail. We don't need to understand why this alien's blood is milk. It's just a fun gag, and we're just going to run with it.
Say, actually, on that point, let's draw a firm border between like what Star Wars has become with mystery boxes, thanks to J.J. Abrams, versus keeping things deliberately a mystery. So, just real quick, a mystery box is where you present a question or an idea that seems very pertinent to the story, and you tease what it might be, but then you never answer it, because the answer is never as great as the ideas that the audience comes up with. That's the idea of the mystery box. And you can have some stories that can actually do a lot of fun stuff with that, but it's very unfulfilling if the story hinges on people getting some of those answers. With something like Dandadan, and you can tell me, Scott, what your thoughts are on this, I feel like with Dandadan, there's lots of silly stuff thrown at us that we're just meant to accept because it's funny. We're not meant to overanalyze it. But the really big questions of aliens and yokai is that thing now that we have to work towards, because these are just kids who just last week stumbled into this world. They won't have all the answers. This is their journey.
Well, and I've definitely noticed, and a lot of people have noticed with this series, that the author and the animators really like to throw in a lot of different pop cultural references into like the animation, into the opening sequences, the opening sequences, into like the lines the characters are saying, or like how the characters are acting. And so a lot of it could just be that that Easter egg kind of mentality that they're putting into the show, because like you've got different dance moves going on in the opening. You've got that little like whiny little lyric that's actually a Pikmin in the opening song too. Like you get the idea. Like there's all sorts of different stuff being thrown into here too, which outside of right now it's not going to make as much sense, but it's still fun and goofy at the same time. So even if somebody watches this 20 years down the road, they're still going to have fun with it, even though they're not going to get every single little reference, because a lot of these references don't make that much difference. They're just fun.
And there's and to build on that, there's a big difference between throwing in references that are meant for fun to help just kind of give more flavor, more color to your world and to your characters, versus something like Ready Player One. If you ever crack open the book Ready Player One, you need a Wiktionary of all pop culture stuff from the 80s.
Yeah.
Because unless you consumed pop culture in the 80s, most of that book does not make any sense to you. And it's difficult because so many things that happen in the book rely on you understanding these references from the 80s. The story itself, like if you boil away all of the references, the story itself is really straightforward, but then it becomes very boring because so much of the juicy details are in the pop culture references, which if you don't get, it makes the story really hard to follow and to enjoy, which is a massive problem with it. Whereas here, like even though there's that scene at the end where Momo's grandmother is asking Momo to do an impersonation of a character that we don't actually know, at least us here in the States, that doesn't take away from how funny or awkward this situation is. If you get the reference, it makes it even better, but you don't necessarily need it to enjoy the humiliation that Momo's right now going through.
Right. And I think like there's definitely something we said, kind of going back to your question earlier, there's definitely something to be said to having a lot of ambiguity in the story, like to having a lot of like space for the audience to question what's going on. And like a lot of authors do that all the time. I mean, some do it a lot worse than others. You just look at a lot of the shipping wars and just you get a headache just looking at all that. But like in this story, it's like there's a lot of this shenanigans going on. We don't fully understand what's going on, and that's because we're still at the character's level of understanding of what's going on, and I'm fine with that. In fact, I'd rather have it be like that. And we don't necessarily have a mystery box. We've just got an actual mystery that we're experiencing along with the characters.
Yeah.
And on a character-driven story, that's a wonderful way to do it.
And one of the things that I do like, just not to spoil, I'm not going to spoil anything specifically from later on the manga. But what I like in the manga, and the anime's been doing a phenomenal job of adapting the manga, so I suspect that we'll get this as we continue to go throughout the series, is that it builds up to answering like at least one of the big questions that's left behind, of having to deal with one of the yokai or having to deal with some of the aliens, whether that be an emotional answer or a world building answer. You get it, but you don't get everything else. And everything else that's kind of left unsaid or unanswered helps to then set up the next mystery that then you go into, or the next adventure that you go into. So it's not like there's a bunch of really loose threads that you're going to get really annoyed that never really get touched on or addressed again, but rather it continues to weave this really complex tapestry of events and of characters and of mysteries and of the world and of far beyond Earth. So that way, when you get to the point where the manga is currently, it's amazing because it's now grown so huge, but it still feels grounded and it is still focused on the characters. So it's never lost itself, which is very hard for a lot of long-running shonen stories to pull off.
Make a really good point.
Yeah, so it always comes back down to the characters. If a character-focused and driven story needs to have well-developed characters, which is what we've been getting with Dandadan since the beginning, and dang it, that's one of the reasons why it's so good, combined with all of the wonkiness.
I mean, the wonkiness is a major part of the charm of this story, so it wouldn't be the same without it.
So, with all of that being said, we'd like to hear what your thoughts are on this most recent episode of Dandadan. Please put them into the comments below. And if you've liked what you've heard from us here in this video, then please like, share, subscribe if you haven't already done so. And when I say share, please do share it out with other people on different social medias, or just simply clicking that little share button and just popping up wherever you feel like. The more eyeballs that we get, the better. Or you can also support us by checking out the books that we've published. Links for them are in the description below. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us on this continuously zany adventure that we call writing. And until the next video, y'all, tschüss.
Okini.